I'm Maddy Dever, the Autistic Rambler. Welcome to the podcast. Let's get right in.
We're going to jump in. Are you comfy?
I am comfy lumpy.
Comfy. That part we might keep. Okay. Hello and welcome to Across the Desk. My name is Elizabeth Plouffe and I am the host of Across the Desk. And we are? I think we are. We are very excited to welcome Maddy Dever and the Autistic Rambler. This is going to be our new series focused on Maddy because we love them. So you see, you're laughing at me already. So you got to say hi or something.
Okay, well, I could definitely say hi. I was just waiting for an opportune moment.
A pause in the breath. Yes. I'm going to read Maddy's bio and then we're going to jump into the chat. And the thing with Maddy and I is that we tend to go off track on odd tangents. So we're going to try very hard as a collective to stay focused. We're going to try. We have no guarantees for anybody. Maddy Dever, they, them, is a non-binary autistic adult and parent of 5 children with 4 also on the autism spectrum. They live in Carleton Place in rural Eastern Ontario. Sorry to hear that. Maddy advocates with both provincial and federal governments for inclusion and acceptance of autistic individuals and for autistic people to have their own voice in policy decisions. Maddy has been an advocate for change in education, affordable and accessible housing, as well as moving disability support rates out of poverty levels. Maddy is a former member of the Ontario Autism Program Advisory Panel and the Ontario Autism Program Implementation Working Group. Why can no government or whatever kind of group keep it short? Like it's always got to be something.
I think they get their bonuses paid for every letter and every word.
I'm thinking like double up the consonants and you get an extra $5,000. Maddy is president of Autistic Bridges Incorporated, an autistic-led organization fostering connections between autistics, their families, and those who support them, and a leader in the National Disability Strategy movement to build a nationwide coalition of disability organizations to advocate for meeting all needs of all disabilities at all ages. They are also on the board of directors of the Autism Alliance Canada, formerly known as CASTA, where they are helping the aspects of developing a national autism strategy. They have spoken at the annual CASTA Summit in 2020 and were both moderator and panel member of 2 panels at the CASTA Summit 2021. In 2021, they spoke twice to the UN Human Rights Committee regarding the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Maddy is on the board of directors of Connect Well Community Health, a rural organization supporting thousands of citizens, including supports and services for autistic children, youth, adults, and their families. Maddy has also led workshops and panels on topics surrounding autism and education. They have spoken about autism with many groups, including ECHO, ECHO, Autism Ontario, which works to educate and inform health professionals on issues related to autism. They are a member of the ECHO Autism Ontario Expert Hub team. Oh my God. I need a mint to get through that. Maddy was also an inaugural member of the editorial board of the Canadian Journal of Autism Equity. Maddy is the campaign manager for Dr. Marlene Sprout.
You bet.
Oh, yeah. Hey, me. Green Party of Ontario candidate for Lanark Frontenac Kingston in the 2022 provincial election.
Yes.
We need to talk about periods.
Well, this is actually they're more like time periods of the things that I do.
Okay, so full disclosure for everybody, Maddy is an awesome punner, and yes, and we roll with the puns. All good. I'm so thrilled. I think we've met 3 years ago.
Yes, I think so. It was 2020. Yeah.
2020? That's 2 years ago.
Yeah. I know. Well, it's 2020, 2021, 2020. That's 3 years. It's
pandemic, man.
It's pandemic math, I tell you.
It just messes me up. But we met because I had joined CASTA. And as most people know who have listened to any of the other podcasts, I have a 24-year-old son diagnosed at 7 with Asperger's syndrome, diagnosed at 9 with dyslexia, He's also ADD and a few other little treasures that we, but he is also an incredible young man who I am ferociously proud of. And he often says to me, I shouldn't say often, but we've had conversations around whether he would change if he was autistic. And he's like, well, would you want me to change? I'm like, absolutely not. Well, what do you mean? I'm like, you are who you are, and it makes you amazing. So why would I just said, don't get me wrong. There's some aspects of you, autism or otherwise, that we need to do some work on. But I would never. And he's also said he wouldn't change that. He would change his dyslexia before he would change being autistic.
And that's actually what I found with a lot of autistics is it's so much usually not, when we have our challenges that we're dealing with, and the challenges that may be the hardest things of our life, they're generally not autistic characteristics, but usually some other thing that's coexisting with us.
Yep.
Being autistic makes those things more challenging. It's sometimes you add every coexisting condition and it adds exponentially to the challenges that we have. But the autism characteristics themselves aren't usually what are our biggest challenges. They make things more challenging, but they themselves aren't our biggest challenges. And when we can understand that and get that, and when parents and when caregivers and when the community at large sees that, I think the more and more they see that, the more and more the stigma about autism will go away.
You and I had a fantastic conversation the other day, which I wanted to circle back to because it ties into what you're saying right now. And with both of us having kids on the spectrum, I don't have the added layer of also being an autistic self-advocate. I have ADD. I have an attitude issue. I have a Marvel
ATD.
What do we call it? We call it ADOS. We were just going on about acronyms, right? So ADOS, so attention deficit shiny. Or squirrel. What used to frustrate the heck out of me in the school system when we talk about parents and community and those perceptions and all those things is that I never ever put restrictions on what my son could do, ever. It didn't occur to me that he couldn't achieve something on his own, do something on his own, what have you. It was always somebody else telling me, no, that'll be step 2. No, we need to help Thomas with that. No. And I'd be like, no. Let's get it straight. And I know you've had similar challenges with your kids.
Yeah, well, my mom had the same attitude as you, that there wasn't anything that I couldn't do. So don't put barriers around me. So she was constantly fighting with schools about trying to find the best fit for me and the best supports for me, and giving me the freedom to do stuff. And I'm finding now as a parent, I have 4 kids that are also autistic, and it is the biggest struggle I have is trying to deal with schools, trying to deal with teachers, trying to deal with administrators that want to put my kids in a box because they can only do those things or they can't do these things. And with some of my kids, they don't give enough support. With other kids, they give too much support to the point where it's stifling. And none of them are really, we've had some good years, we've had some good teachers, and those years I treasure, and I know my kids will probably remember those years the most, I hope. But it's for the most part, they have this inability to see what the kids' needs are.
Yep.
Their needs tend to get put aside to the convenience of trying to deal with everybody else in the class or their own things in the morning. So dealing with schools is very, very difficult because we as autistics, we fight barriers. There's so many barriers in front of us of what we can or can't do. But let's just take sensory, as one of those things that where schools could control the environment to support and accommodate us. When we're in a room with 30 kids, all loud, sound bouncing off things, lights that are, from the dark ages, which is kind of funny.
You made an inadvertent pun there somehow, an ironic pun.
It's an accidental ironic pun. 3 points.
Yeah.
We'll have a pun counter going up there.
Okay.
So you've got all of these things happening in a room where you could provide, if accommodation to the child's needs of, changing the lights is one thing, giving noise canceling headphones is another, letting them move around to different areas that might be calmer area. These are things that if schools did this, how we react, how the behaviors that you may see will change. And this
neurotypicals would benefit from some of those things as well, Maddy. That's the thing.
Absolutely.
I can't stand fluorescent lighting. It drives me nuts. It's between the flicker and the hum of the light. I happen to have hyperacuity, so excessively good hearing, which unfortunately my son also inherited. And those lights are good for nobody. They are proven to cause migraines, visual disturbance, headaches, stress, tension in your neck, the whole 9 yards. There's nothing good about them, folks. So what Maddy and I are going to continue talking about is most of the accommodations that come in, and I get just as passionate as Maddy does about this, are good for neurotypicals as well. We have just put up with crappy lights and crappy, noise and whatever for so long that we think it's okay. And then when somebody like yourself is strong enough to say, wait a minute, no, this isn't positive, it's taken to be a complaint or you're being too sensitive or whatever. It's like, back your truck up. Are you kidding me? Do the research that shows me that fluorescent lighting is a positive thing for anybody.
Yeah. What we really need to move towards is universal design, and universal design in classrooms, in workplaces, in homes, in transportation. And we should have, a whole podcast session on universal design. But
I'm writing it down.
Really excellent. I have it on my list of things that I want to tackle. But it's what we really need to tackle is the attitude underneath this all, right?
Agreed.
We have an attitude in schools, and I think larger in life, but at least in Ontario schools, where inclusion is a nice goal. It's where we eventually want to achieve, right? And so it's not the starting point. And that we need to flip the attitude. We need to change the attitude where inclusion is, we do inclusion from the start. That was the actual the theme of this year's National Accessibility Week that we had last week in May, first week of June. Inclusion from the start. When we start off saying we will be inclusive, we're going to design everything inclusive. We're going to change things now so they're inclusive. Instead of it being a goal, we change the attitude behind it. We need an attitude of inclusive. We need an attitude of people willing to accommodate. Because when we accommodate one person, I know
they're so deluded in what they think they've achieved and I'm to any educator who's listening or what have you. I say this as a parent who has experienced it with a neurodiverse and a neurotypical child. Neurodiverse child experienced, he had better bullying than, we're going to grade it. He had better bullying.
Level 2.0.
Woo! Because it was very isolated and incidental and what have you. And we could deal with that and move on. Whereas my daughter, in 2 different grades, sustained year-long, intensive, subversive, aggressive bullying that with the second year she was bullied, ended with her being assaulted in class by the bully, who the school refused to move onto a different class, and also refused, I didn't see why my daughter should have to move. She wasn't the turd. And I had to give her a cell phone for protection, which we had not planned to do. She calls me bawling her eyes out because this kid's now assaulted her in class. Teacher did nothing. And I said, okay. I said, you're going home. Like, her friend was with her. I said, you go find Mr. Robertson, who was the principal. And she was worried about getting in trouble. Why should the victim be worried about the repercussions for standing up for themselves, for anybody? And I said, so she found the principal, handed the phone. She says, my mom wants to talk to you. And they were used to me by then. And I said, thank you so much for the amazing job you're doing at controlling bullying in your school, and the bullying programs you're providing and how effective they are. And he knows where this is heading. So my daughter was just assaulted in your classroom. The teacher did nothing, and the bully is still sitting there. She's going home. And you and I are going to have a meeting because you suck. So a couple of weeks ago, this will tie in, I promise. Sometimes we have a squirrel moment and it seems like it doesn't fit, but I promise it does. 3.5 weeks ago, I had surgery on my ear. I had to get a hole in my eardrum replaced. And it's interesting to me how squinty people get when they hear it's an ear versus, some other typical surgery. About a week after my surgery, I walked into a grocery store. And my hearing had begun to come back, but only in high registers. And I don't mean cash registers, I mean sound registers, that it was the upper octaves. And so all the pingy, dingy, sharp, piercing noises, that's all that was coming through. And I walked into the grocery store and it felt like a full body assault. I didn't know where to look. I didn't know how to block it out. I didn't know where to turn. I knew I had to get stuff done, so I had to power through it. And walking through that store was painful. And I just felt like a constant assault. And by the time I got home that night, so on top of that, I was then in a intense social situation where it was a ton of voices. And I couldn't screen them out. And it was high registers. And it was like somebody putting an ice pick in my head. And I walked in the door and walked up to my husband and just started bawling because I'd spent an entire day feeling like I was getting punched over and over and over again. And I processed that the next day. And I went, oh my God, that is what folks who are autistic, who have sensory issues, experience every day of their life. And I was like, I can't even imagine doing that every day and how exhausting it is to deal with lights and noises and voices and people touching you and a pricky tag and scratchy something and nobody listening.
And actually, I'm so sorry that you went through that. As you're talking, I realizing where you're coming to this and piecing this and the empathy that you have now is, but we have this situation, but on top of that, we're told that we're wrong, that we're broken, that we need to change, that we need to get over it, we need to handle it, and any of the behaviors that happen because we lose, the more and more it happens to you, what you had was a shutdown. When you got home, you
I didn't even think about that, Maddy.
Yeah.
That's what that was.
So that's what that was. You were overwhelmed. You fell, crying and just were overwhelmed. That's a shutdown. A meltdown is when there's behaviors that come out of that, right? That's the difference between a meltdown and a shutdown. It's the exact same thing. We just, some of us process it differently, or different things, will change the outcome of it. But, when we have all of these things happening to us and we're not accommodated, but in the flip side, we're told to control it, told to,
suck it up.
That the issue is us, then you have all of these other, like behaviors where we can't self-regulate because there's too much happening. And the more and more it happens, the more and more we lose any sense of the ability to control things that we may normally have been able to. And really, it's all about accommodation. For you, the surgery is your accommodation, right?
Well, so before, here's the interesting thing though. So again, hyperacuity, right? So what I was told
Yeah.
was we have, if you're watching the video, we have human hearing. Next level is cat
Yeah.
hearing. Next level is porpoise hearing. And I, on a daily basis, am between a cat and a porpoise,
Yeah.
right? So I
Yeah.
have always dealt with being able to hear too much, but I don't know any different. And it didn't,
Yeah.
it may have inadvertently contributed to overwhelm. And I'm just realizing that now. So when I punctured my eardrum, I lost 30 to 40% of my hearing in my right ear. That presented a different challenge because now I've spent my whole life being used to being able to hear everything. And now I have to turn my left ear to people and explain that I've got a problem. And I have to turn and I have to accommodate them being like me being able to hear them because I feel like it's my thing to do. Some people were kind and would move to the other side of me or whatever because they recognize there's only so much I can do. Now with the whole being repaired, it's working its way back up in levels. And when my ear equalizes, because right now it's not equalized, so it's blocked, so it's protecting me from that flood.
Absolutely.
But again, back in Fortino's last week. And do you remember, we'll take a Snapple bottle for an example and the cap on a Snapple bottle. And you know how you, but you can make it, you can make the cap snap back and forth and it makes that.
Oh yeah.
Click. Yeah. Okay. That's what my eardrum is doing right now.
It's a great fidget.
Yeah. Oh, good idea. Oh, I got to show you something else we found called comm strips, which is really cool. We'll go off on that tangent later. So in Fortino's though, all of a sudden my eardrum popped and it all came in again. And I had to stand there and literally hang on to the rail because I was like, mother, So you said you were sorry that I've had to go through that, which I appreciate deeply. However, I am really finding gratitude in this experience because before now, I have never understood what my son went through when he was little and was dealing with all of that. And I've never understood the connection between stimming and handling the overwhelm and what that looks like. I've never understood what it's like to go through a day feeling like you're getting assaulted and experience. And I didn't realize that was a shutdown. So I'm grateful that I've had to go through this. And I'm grateful that you've had the patience to speak to me about it because I now have a whole nother level, even before, like beyond what I thought I had.
Yeah.
So folks, if you've ever been in a situation where you've walked around with a tag somewhere, could be your underwear, could be your shirt, could be your whatever, or you get a piece of gravel in your shoe.
Or a loose string.
Something.
A loose piece of string. Yeah.
Or, like I wear glasses, Maddie wears glasses, you get like a hair caught somewhere and whatever. Everybody can find something where it just irritates the heck out of you and you've had to spend an hour trying to figure it out because it just drives you bananas. Imagine doing that all day and not having any voice to make that stop. And you are forced to go to school 8 hours a day. You are forced to engage in certain areas, work, whatever, for so long a day. And as we read in Maddy's bio at the beginning, part of why we're bringing the Autistic Rambler to Across the Desk is because Maddy has an incredible voice, and not just the timbre, which we've discussed, because he has a voice for, like meditation apps and things like that. But Maddy is incredibly insightful, not just because of lived experience, but you approach things around a voice. And I was going to say from a justice perspective because of the sign behind you, but it's not justice. It's humanity.
Yeah.
It's giving people back their humanity.
Yeah. It's agency. That's the word I like is giving people, like everyone has needs that need to be respected and they need to have those needs accommodate, and that's, and their voice is heard. That's all about agency, because without
like that.
agency, we get walked over. We get walked over. We get told to do. We get, it all becomes about us being wrong. Agency is about us having needs that are right. And yeah,
We just got another podcast idea. I love that perspective, and I think I really am not a fan of the word empowerment. I find it has been overutilized, and now it's become a bit of a token word, and I'm not a fan. But agency, I can get behind. Like, I like it. Anyway, you were going, sorry.
Yeah, I wanted to circle back. You mentioned that, well, you because you've been, hard to hear in the one ear, that you've been accommodating by turning your head. Actually, you've been adapting. When you do something, it's adaptation, right? When others are changing for you, that's accommodation. Now, one of the key things that I have found is that autistics can't learn to adapt until there's some sort of baseline of accommodation that they can survive on. Then they can adapt from that. So the more accommodations are given, the easier it is for us to adapt to those small changes that don't happen. Most of the time we're told that we need to adapt, but it's really challenging to adapt when there's no accommodations given to us at all. So in your case, if people are making sure they're on the side of the ear that you can hear, they're accommodating you. If you have to turn, you're adapting so that you can
I get both. Yeah, I get both. Right. And part of it is habit, right? Like, so my husband and I, for an example, when we go for a walk, he walks on the left, I walk on the right. That's just the way, unless we're on a busy road, and then because he's the gentleman sometimes. So that works out because he's on the side, I can hear him anyway. I just went to the Royal Botanical Gardens with a friend of mine, and she prefers to walk on the right. And I kept having to say, I can't hear you. Right. So she accommodated and went on the left. And for the rest of that day, we were both cognizant that she was not in a negative way, but it just made life easier because of that simple accommodation versus me having to adapt all day. Because it also, honestly, it hurts your neck after a while. So,
I have a similar issue because, since the car accident that I had 2 years ago, I had spinal surgery on my neck, and I have, my range of motion to turn left is back quite a bit. It's, it's just a little bit painful. I mean, preferably everything's, looking straight forward, but, to the right, it's really difficult and really painful, so I need people to be in front of me or to the left of me. And anytime I go into a place to sit down, I need to find a place that's in the middle or on the right side, so I'm looking left. And
so we should have done that for you when we had that meeting at the hotel, because I think we both sat on your left and your right, and I didn't know about that, and I should have sat in the chair opposite you.
You were in my line of view. I would have asked. It's something that I have always asked. I cannot. I need to. I'm not very. I am verbal, but I don't. My verbal, remembering conversations and everything is really challenging for me. But when I see people are seeing things, it's a little bit easier, and I try to, piece the visual things that I'm looking at so I can recall the important things. It's not as good as like when I'm on a Zoom or things like that. I type notes all the time.
Yep, I remember.
And when I'm in meetings, the same thing. If I have the ability, I'll take notes, because I don't remember things. But if I can see people in front of me, it's easier for me to hear. If they're to the right of me, I am not hearing them. I may be acknowledging them, but nothing is retained at all. And so I have to tell people that I can't.
Sat on your right. So what you're saying is you heard nothing.
I don't remember you. I just remember Paulette,
I am forgettable. That's okay.
Unforgettable. That's what you are.
So
non-copyright for sure.
Yeah. All good. All good. It's interesting that we did that, because as a family trait, my mom and my dad as well, a little bit, both would burst into song with the least provocation. And then, of course, I now do it as well. And we have relatively decent singing voices, right? Like my mom was in Sweet Adelines and sang in choir and whatever. I'm okay. Like, I won't shatter glass. So then my auntie comes from England, my mom's youngest sister. And of course, something happened. And all three of us, so my mom, my auntie, and myself, all went into same song at the same time. And my poor daughter stood there. She's like, oh my God, it's genetic. And I'm like,
yeah,
your brother got to be autistic, you get to sing. Like,
exactly.
We pick our things.
So basically, get together and sing. It's gene therapy.
Oh, solid. That was a good one.
Thank you.
So speaking of genes, that's an interesting segue. Because I always used to find it fascinating, especially in the 70s and 80s. And I was, a kid, and you would hear people saying, well, being gay is a choice. And I remember even then, before I knew what gay was or whatever, and I'm like, well, wait a second. That doesn't sound like a choice. That sounds like a thing. Like that's who you are. And like, why would you? And quite frankly, community made it so hard to be gay, lesbian, like whatever you are on the LGBTQ plus spectrum. Why would you choose that? Like, you would not make that choice to make your life. And, that just seems stupid to me. Like, okay, if you had a choice, wouldn't you choose not to fit in? I am not advocating forcing fitting in, but wouldn't you just choose the easier road versus choosing the road where people are being very not nice to you and what have you? So,
I mean, it's in the 70s and 80s, it was about being gay was being a choice. In this decade, it's about trans and non-binary being a choice, and it's the same thing. It's like, well, really, do you with all of the aggression and the microaggressions and the negativity and the dangers and the
like,
struggles,
why would you choose that?
Like why? They're just chasing clout. You're just chasing influence. Like, oh my God, there's
better ways.
There are so many better ways. But the thing is, like, the flip side is, like, not doing it causes real harm. Not being out, not being free, not being
like that itchy underwear.
Oh, I mean, yeah, I mean.
No, and I mean that respectfully, just before anybody has a bird about that. It's like, why would you walk around with a tag that drives you crazy if you could make life easier for yourself and cut out the tag? So likewise, why would you walk around pretending to be what society expects when it grates on you like an itchy tag, versus operating in community as what works for you? My philosophy is, as long as you are not hurting anybody, do your thing. I don't care who you love. I don't care what you dress like. I just don't care. If you show up and you're a nice person, like, I've met some fantastic drag queens. I have met some fantastic, like, I would love it. Great. If you show up and you're an asshat, then I don't care if you wear pants, a skirt, a skirt, or a kilt, like, and what's underneath it doesn't matter. If you're a jerk, you're a jerk.
Being gay, being lesbian, being trans, they're not choices. However, being an asshole is.
Right? Everybody has an asshole. It doesn't mean you have to be one.
That's the conversion therapy we need. To remove the asshole.
Technically, we don't use bad language on this podcast, but we're just going to let the asshole slide because it fits.
Oh, okay.
No. I'm in. It's all good. It's all good. This is the advantage of it being, our thing is that we can use that language, and we're not sponsored yet, so it's all good.
Exactly. So we're just for a moment, for editing clarity, jerk conversion therapy. There you go. You can replace that.
And I wish it were that easy, because to me, being a jerk is a momentary lapse of character. And you have just had a moment where your brain has gone kafoozled and you've decided to make a wrong choice. But being an asshat seems to be a lifestyle, and you just choose to,
Yeah.
that's how you exist in the world. And I feel bad for you. If you walk through this life hating on people because of how they dress or who they love or how long their hair is, because Maddy's hair is gorgeous, or I honestly, like, I'm braiding that the next time we're together, or whatever, please don't try and come and talk to me. Please don't try and convert me. Please don't try and convince me that you are in any way in the right. You will not.
Yeah.
And I will stand my ground against you just as fiercely as you hold on to your delusional beliefs that how somebody dresses or who they love defines them as a human being. Because you, friend, have no humanity if that's how you walk through this world. And I pity you for how small you make your life when you make those choices, because I have met some incredible people in the LGBTQ plus community. And why would I give that up? Why would I alienate an entire group of amazing people? And this is what I said to my daughter's friend. He came out as gay at 14, and love him to bits, right? Like there's a longer story there. All I said to him was, I'm not a fan of heterosexual PDA. So if you want to bring your partner, all in, like, let's have a barbecue. Totally awesome. Do not get freaky, because I don't enjoy that from my heterosexual married couples and boyfriend, girlfriend. I am not going to enjoy it from you. It's not a thing for the gay. It's a thing for everybody. Have a little smoochie. That's all good. You start doing anything more than that, I'm going to take your little unicorn asses and throw you out, because that's not how I fly. And we had some amazing conversations. And when he came out, it made his life so hard, and his family wasn't accepting, and his peer group didn't know what to do. They were probably more accepting than his family.
Yeah.
And I said to him, look, so we're clear, this is your home. You need to come here. You need to escape. You need support. You need whatever. No matter what, that door is always open. And I don't care who you love. I just care that you get loved. End of story. Yeah. And so they cycle in and out of each other's lives, but I think he knows without fail if he needed help in any way. Because whenever I see him out in the community, he's like, hi, Mama Poof. That's what her friends call me. He says, Mama Poof. I'm like, hi, sweetheart, how are you? And I'm like, oh, I said, did you know that because he does his nails, did you know that over at Dollarama, they've got a new line of Sally Hansen's, and they're like, this. And he's like, oh, we have this whole, it's freaking awesome. So now so we've established, this is where I'm going to hand it back to Maddy, because I don't walk in these shoes. We've established that, living in the LGBTQ plus community is not a choice. It just is. People would not make that choice to make their life harder. And as you mentioned earlier, some folks who have a diagnosis of autism also have other diagnoses. I shared my son's. He doesn't happen to have, as far as I'm aware, knock on wood, like no mental health issues, what have you. He has his own, complications with his dyslexia and what have you. But June is Pride Month.
Yes.
And it is a month that I support. We've gone out to events to support the LGBTQ plus community, and no issue with it. I did go to Pride once. Was not my thing. There was a lot of bums out, and I was like, I'm good. Fly the flag, all about the rainbow. I don't need to be involved in that.
You should go to some Pride family picnics. They're much different and much more.
That I would enjoy. I would enjoy that 100%. But we were to tie this together. Yeah. I cannot imagine being in a situation where you already have a processing issue with being autistic, and not you, but just in general. Yeah. Then you can add a layer of potentially, this is not everybody by any stretch, some kind of mental health issue. Then potentially, if you're a lucky duck like my son, you can add a health issue. Thomas happens to be asthmatic and anaphylactic and what have you. And now to, make it supremely amazing, we wrap that all up in a nice rainbow bow. So tell me more, because I am intrigued, because you've lived both sides.
Yep.
Tell me more.
Okay, so what we're talking about right now is called intersectionality.
Oh, that's right. That was the word that we were gonna. Yes.
Yeah, that's why I brought it up.
This is why he's the smart guy, and I'm just here to chat a lot.
So, okay, so one of the things about the world seems to be, so concerned about binaries. Yet the thing that gets that people put onto autistics is that we are so, we have so much binary thinking, right, wrong, left, right, whatever. Yeah. Yet the world itself is so binary, and one of the things that autistics struggle with the most is, understanding hidden and unwritten societal norms. Yep. So when they don't make sense, we tend to not follow them. And gender, gender is a societal construct. It's something. What gender is. So we're not talking about sex, the way your body was made, but we're talking about gender as the way you express things. And we've in Western society, we have a pretty rigid sense of what males do and what females do,
so
how
stupid.
they think, how they do. And we have a conversation with 10 people, five who are so-called female, 5 who are so-called male, and you're going to get 10 different presentations of gender, and some of them are going to overlap. It's not a binary. And so autistics, for whatever, and the same thing is this construct of who you should love, the very males should love females, period. That you take 10 people, 5 so-called females, 5 so-called male, and you put them in a room. They're not all going to, all 5 so-called females are not going to connect with all 5 males. There's going to be, in terms of natural attraction, it could be different. So autistics tend to have a lot higher percentage of us who have a sexuality that is not binary, and have a different way of looking at gender. So gender fluid, non-binary, trans, a significant portion of us are more comfortable in these areas, because we're sort of defining gender and sexuality ourselves, because the societal rules don't make any sense to us. And personally, I mean, I go back, way back. Like, people have asked me, at what point did I realize that I was bisexual? And it's probably earlier than this, but what the first moment I can ping on is Will Wheaton, is Wesley Crusher in Star Trek Next Generation.
Oh, he was such a cutie.
I was so attracted to him, and I then spent my teen years really, I realized once I was given the term bisexual, thank you to the BBSs and CompuServe and AOL for letting me learn about things, because I think before the internet, honestly, I think here's the thing. I learned the term bisexual by looking it up, and it's like, oh, okay, knowing that in society it still wasn't looked on really well, but more and more things in the 80s were, in TV shows and sitcoms, there's more and more characters that were lesbian or characters that were gay. Bisexuality really didn't come into the media until like the late 90s into the 2000s. But there's so much. Bisexuality is accepted for females and way not accepted for males. That's a whole other thing we can talk about at some point. But for me, I as I understood the term, I struggled with it, and I got caught up in a Christian cult in my 20s.
Oh,
So
Lordy.
like there's a lot of closetedness. I never gave up the feelings, but I was closeted everything else. But I think what it is now, why we're seeing it so more, and why you're definitely seeing with autistics so much more, is because the terms are out there to describe things. So and the more it's talked about, the more I don't know. I mean, I struggled for years to understand in terms of gender. I never felt male. No, I cannot think of a single time in my life where I accepted the truth about myself that I was male. It just never set, and I don't know how many times, when I was in elementary school, the term sissy, the term fag, the term queer, all of these terms were thrown at me, and I didn't understand what those terms meant as a kid, but it was because the way I did things. I played with girls.
No, Maddie. No, hang on. Sorry. It was not the way you did things. It was what those kids were being exposed to at home by those narrow-minded, bigoted, ignorant parents who were using that kind of foul language to describe individuals that they felt didn't meet community. George Carlin did a great thing on words, right? And then he proceeded to unleash this string of what are considered racist words, right? And he stopped and he said, they are only words until they come out of somebody's mouth who's racist.
Yeah.
They attach meaning. So sissy, queer, like a fag in England is a cigarette.
I know.
A faggot in England is a bundle of sticks.
Yeah.
Somebody took that for whatever reason and made it a bad word. You did nothing wrong.
Yeah.
Somebody.
Oh, I don't. No, but what I'm saying is there was something about me that looked different, that was doing things different, that I didn't see myself as doing things different or being different. I now look back and realize, okay, I mean, the words they used were horrible, but they saw something in me that I didn't see in myself, and I see that as okay and normal. And I wish it had been normalized then, because I would have lived my life differently and more free, instead of coming to really be open about these things in my 30s and 40s. There's I say it a lot. I have a rainbow family. I have my kids that have all kinds of letters in the LGBTQ alphabet. I I envy this generation of kids who are still having these struggles, but there's more and more openness about it. There's more and more defiance to the cultural norms.
You did that for your kids.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I hope you own that, because you've shown them. Like, that's incredible that you've done that.
I have been the first person they've talked about everything, because they know that I am open. They know that regardless of what they do, and whatnot, and who they are, I will love them and I will not judge them. I've made it very clear, and they've all been they know when they need to talk to somebody about something, whether it's about themselves or something they've done, they can come to me and there will be no judgment. And if they ask me for help, what to do, I will then offer it, but I won't tell them what to do, because I'm here as a sounding board. I'm here as a person that loves them unconditionally, and I'm here as somebody that can help them if they want. But I'm here to walk beside them, not in front of them with a leash.
Exactly.
And
I would judge my daughter more harshly if she came home with a belly button ring than if she came home with a female partner. I'd be like, how you doing?
Yeah.
Do you bake? As long as you bake. Do you bake and watch Disney? Those would be my two questions. And
exactly.
My daughter filters all of her relationships through very unique filters. And for all intents and purposes is cisgender and straight and what have you. the guy has to like Disney.
Yeah.
And there was one other thing. And I was like, solid. And I found out recently, which blew me away. She measures all men against my husband. And if they don't treat her the way my husband, I'm fortunate, or the way we treat each other, right? If they don't do that, if they don't let her be who she is, right? I'm not an easy person to live with by any stretch of the imagination. I am a very opinionated individual. I like things done. Shocking. I know. Oh, you rotten cookie. I thought we had something.
We do. It's called realism.
Solid. I'm very opinionated. I am very assertive. I am everything society says a woman shouldn't be. On top of that, I am a woman entrepreneur. I am a woman tech entrepreneur. I don't take a lot of crap because I've seen what happens when you do. And I've seen how people will continue to take inches from you when you allow them to get away with certain behavior. And I will take a certain amount. Don't get me wrong. I'll give somebody a warning shot. I'll let them get away with a little bit. But eventually, I had a conversation with somebody and I said, let's be clear that if you continue to make the choice of this behavior, it will chip away at how I feel about you. And eventually, you won't even know, but I'll be done. And I'll walk away and I won't even blink. And I wish we could build that kind of, maybe to not that extreme, but
resilience.
That resilience into our youth to understand where they draw the line, not only with what behavior they'll accept, but with behavior they'll do. So those kids that made that choice out of innocence, I think, to use the terms fag, sissy, whatever towards you, they were emulating what they were learning at home, but they could have made a choice. My dad used to use some very choice terminology for people of other cultures, to which I kind of went, hulale, and said, no, not going to ever exhibit that language in our home. And we had a friend who used that kind of language, and I took them aside and said, just so we're clear, we don't use that terminology in our home. That is not something my children will ever be exposed to as being okay. You don't ever judge somebody by what they wear, what color their skin is, what their accent is. You judge them by how they act and what they contribute back to the world. And if I have a friend who happens to present as the sex male and chooses to wear dresses and does their hair fabulous and whatever, solid. As long as you're a nice person and not the other A word we were using earlier, don't care. That's what we need to do. Those lines need to be drawn on both sides of behavior.
Absolutely. I mean, there's so much. We, as a society, we've moved along progressively. Well, okay. I thought so, but then I look at the states in the last 2, 3.
Oh, please don't look down there. Don't look down. No, just don't look.
No. Okay. Sorry. My eyes.
Exactly, right? It's like walking along and seeing somebody wearing a thong in the middle of a mall. Like you just that burns into your retinas.
Yes, but it has filtered through upwards. There is now more.
It's definitely more out there. I agree with you. Like there's more. So the pride flag. There is more. One thing that happened in Burlington that I think I shared with you was that Burlington has put in rainbow crosswalks, which I think are fabulous, right? So there was a decision to be made on where the next rainbow crosswalk went. And the Catholic School Board was not getting on board with being progressive around supporting the LGBTQ plus community within, shocking, I know. They are trying. I will give kudos if you happen to be Catholic or whatever. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not smacking you, but you need to come along. So it was, I believe, a unanimous vote to put the rainbow crosswalk in front of the Halton Catholic District School Board head office. And I was like, yeah.
Yes, Noah can come home now.
I just think sometimes. So my business partner, Paulette, and I, we do the Future Looks Good podcast to talk about autistic individuals being forced or pushed. And there is a distinction. And like you said at the beginning, there are times where, support needs to be given. Should you force? Should you push? If you see an injurious behavior or a self-destructive behavior, okay, then there's some forcing that needs to happen because that has to get corrected or the individual is going to end up. Flip side, if you see something that that person is capable of, like going back to our beginnings around school and teachers and expectations, pushing, I have pushed my son because, and what I say to him is, I wouldn't get angry with you if I didn't believe you were capable. I wouldn't get angry with you if I didn't believe you were worth the time of me getting angry. And if you didn't meet expectation, if you couldn't meet expectation, that would be one thing. But if you choose not to meet expectation, I will push you because I don't want you to ever think for any reason that you are less than. And that comes down to having a diagnosis of being autistic. That comes down to being in the LGBTQ plus. That comes down to managing all those layers. Nobody should ever be forced to feel less than. And for some organizations in society, like the Halton Catholic District School Board, we have to push a little and then we have to force. And I believe that rainbow crosswalk teetered on the line. But now I see pride flags at Catholic elementary schools. Now I know, hopefully on some level, even symbolically, that they are having those conversations and those kids understand that there is more than one way to live a life. And just because it's not the same as how you've been raised or you've chosen to live a life, it doesn't make it wrong. And if you're living in a home where that parental unit has decided that being gay is wrong, you don't have to believe that. I had a neighbor who I discovered was intensely racist, which just goes against every part of my being. And I said to him, like, we got into this whole discussion and he got quite heated. And I was like, okay. I said, I need you to understand that I have no frame of reference for how you live in the world that way. I would never, ever choose to discriminate against somebody solely on how they looked. If they cut in front of me in line, I don't care if you are black, white, periwinkle blue, I'm going to come after you. But I'm not going to cut in front of line just because you happen to be black, blue, periwinkle, whatever. And so I asked him, I said, why do you feel that way? Like, how did you get here? And he looked at me and he said, it's the way my mother raised me. I said, okay. I said, you have a choice, right? And he just looked at me. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, just because that's what your mother raised you, that does not mean you have to continue that. So, like we said earlier, being gay in the LGBTQ plus community is not a choice. It is a choice when you choose not to show up as your authentic self because community has decided that that's not acceptable and you don't have the support or the tools yet to show up the way you need to. It is also a choice to change how you support these communities. It is a choice for how you show up for the autistic community and understand that you can change expectation understand that you don't have to live within the checklist that some organization has created about what an autistic should be.
Yeah.
You can change. If you grow up hearing that people with a disability are less than, you don't have to believe that.
You know, what you're saying has just made me realize something. You know, go back to what we said earlier. What you did with with that racist person, in talking to them about choices, you gave him agency to
I hope
change,
so.
agency to be different. And what you're talking about now, like I've been thinking about agencies in terms of giving autistics or people with disabilities their rights, and putting their needs first, and giving them a voice. But agency is a bigger and wider thing, because we're trying to get people to see the change. It's really about agency to everybody to come to see individually people's worth and value.
100%.
And from that, if people have intrinsic worth and value, then their needs have their needs need to be met. Their needs need to be accommodated, and we need to put inclusion first. When we do that,
For everybody,
exactly,
not just the disability
exactly.
community, not just the gay community, not just whatever.
It's everybody.
You look at my neurotypical daughter, and there are things around her, I'm sure, need to be accommodated. There's stuff around I don't like, for an example, people chewing gum with their mouth open. It drives me crazy, right? Like crazy.
Because they're choosing to do that.
They are. Did you see that gift I gave you?
Yeah, I took it.
Done.
Took it right out of its wrapper.
Just to you. But they're everybody. This is the thing, is that inclusion has been attached to the disability community, to the LGBTQ plus community, and that's horseshit, people. Inclusion is for everybody. Everybody needs something, whether you like to keep the remote control on the right side of the couch versus the left side. Like and I know that I'm not trivializing anything. Yeah. It really is that granular. Yeah. Everybody needs accommodating on some level. I can't wear certain ear pods, like the ear pods you've got on. I can't wear those. My ears are too small. Can't do it. I have spent my existence trying to find ones that work for me. So I adapt to what's available, but I would really prefer, if anybody's listening, that you realize that some people have very small ears, and those ear pods are ouchy. Need to find something better. I just
child size. Yeah.
Oh, valid.
Yeah.
See, I just talked to you and you understand. Inclusion is for everybody. I hope community recognizes that inclusion. I think it's honestly going the way of empowerment. It's becoming this token word, and nobody's everybody's like, oh, well, we need to be inclusive to those people.
So, and one of my biggest issues is, what is inclusion? The Ontario education system thinks it has an inclusive education system, and what they mean is, well, the kids are present. There's kids, the kids with all needs and all diversities are all together. That's inclusive. No, that's integration. That's integration. Inclusion only happens when everyone's accommodated. If you don't have accommodation, you don't have inclusion.
You don't have a seat at the table.
We need to have a culture of accommodation. We need to have inclusive, design from the start, and we need to respect everybody's agency. That everybody has intrinsic value, not based on what they can or cannot do. It's there, and everybody's. When everyone is accommodated, we have inclusion.
Everybody wins.
We have inclusion. When we have, and the only way we're going to get that is a change in attitude. And the change in attitude, we can talk about language of inclusion at some point.
Oh, that's another day.
Absolutely.
We got to wrap up.
It's the attitude that needs to change, and we're at that point. We're at the point where
I think so too. I think we've seen huge, I see some backsliding, to reference our neighbors in the South, and I see some interesting choices that are being made by conservative minds who believe that this impacts family values and all the rest of that horse crap. And I got to tell you, just because the mom and dad are male and female doesn't mean the home life's spectacular, folks. I would much rather see a child raised by two women or two men in a loving, inclusive home that promotes individuality and, removes, what's the word we're looking for there? Removes limits, and then to keep children with heterosexual parents who couldn't raise a cockroach in a matchbox. Like, come on. Okay.
Yeah. All right.
I think we've managed to save the world in 45 minutes, which is really awesome. So, so Maddy and I are going to be continuing with the Autistic Rambler. We're calling it a series, but that's going to change that word. That's not the right word, but we're going to continue rambling about autism and all kinds of other things. And Maddy just brings an extremely, unique is an overword, but you do, because you have a really fantastically wide lens around how things connect, and you see connections between things that other folks don't. And you are willing to be vulnerable and share not only your personal experience, but your aspirations for the world at large, which a lot of folks are too quiet about that. Right. And
thank you.
I've never been a quiet person, and I'm grateful for that now. I struggled with that for a very long time. I grew up being told to be quiet. I grew up being told girls don't behave that way. I grew up being told you can't do that. You're too small. You're too short. You're too this. You're too that. You're too much. You're whatever. And I lived with a lot of shame for years because I wasn't what society expected a little girl should be. And it wasn't, and honestly, it wasn't until probably my dad died when I was 20 that I kind of went, screw all of you. Life's too short. I am never living another day not being who I am, which is honest, direct, loyal, tenacious, assertive when I need to. And if you go after somebody in front of me or near me or somebody I love or anything else who can't defend themselves, I won't even blink. I will stand beside you 600% and be there and be that voice if I need to be it, or be that presence. I'm told I have a presence that helps bullies understand what's going to happen if they don't stand down.
Yeah.
We need to create that in so many more people so that we can continue this positive spin, so that we can celebrate pride and nobody's afraid to show up, so that you can not be ashamed. My son does not share his diagnosis. He knows I do this, but he does not, and he should not be ashamed of that. He should not be worried about what happens if he shares that. We have to, so the Autistic Rambler, our goal is to change that. And I hope if you've listened today and you've listened to Maddy's incredible story and our yippity yapping and whatever, that something has connected with you. And you go out and use your voice and make your seat at the table. And if you need help with that, we're going to be talking about resources and ways to connect you, and we'll figure it out.
It's a journey, and it's a, yes, absolutely. Oh, num num num! This is the Cookie Monster. Num num num. Cookie Monster wants to say 1 cookie good for justice, 2 cookie good for agency.
You sound like a Chinese Cookie Monster.
I used to be better at this.
Okay, I'm gonna say goodbye, everybody.
Thank you, Maddy Dever. You can actually go to autisticrambler.ca and check out what
.com.
Is it .com? I thought it was .ca.
It's a .com. No, it's autisticrambler.com.
.com.
Rambler with an R, not a W.
Why would it be a Wambler? Why are we talking like that?
No, not Wambler. No, that's Wrangler. Never mind. Let's just AutisticRambler.com.
That was funny. All right. We had a spelling issue. All good. Sort it out. We'll share the links and stuff. But Maddy's got a lot of awesome information that he shares from a lived experience perspective, from a political advocate perspective, from a dad perspective. And he's just got a lot of awesome stuff to say. So thank you for listening. We really appreciate it. There will be more, and likely similar to what you've heard, a little bit of bad language, a little bit of pun, a little bit of laughing, lots of good information. Say it in my right ear. I'll be good to go. Hopefully you're listening with both ears. And we will talk to you soon. Thank you so much for joining us. And bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining us today on the Autistic Rambler podcast. Please visit us on social media on Facebook and Instagram at Autistic Rambler, or visit our website, autisticrambler.com, to read, listen, and watch more from Maddy Dever. Please like, follow, and subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen or watch. And enjoy the rest of your day.